Hello, I'm Grandin Gill, the Academic Director of the Doctor of Business Administration program at the University of South Florida's Muma College of Business. This is one of a series of videos that I'm using to introduce the Muma DBA program and DBA programs in general. In this particular video, what I'm going to do is try to show how Muma's DBA program is positioned within the universe of DBA programs in general. Before talking about the positioning of the USF DBA program, it's useful to consider the commonalities between the types of programs I'm talking about. Specifically, I'm focusing on executive DBA programs that are taken while individuals are working full-time. Now, in the past, there have been DBA degrees, such as the one that I got at Harvard Business School, that were full-time programs and essentially were just a different name for the PhD. But in the case of the programs I'm discussing here, what we're looking at is a variety of things. To begin with, I am looking at programs that are accredited by AACSB International. This is the premier accrediting agency for business schools, and it accredits schools but not programs. So technically what I'm talking about is programs offered by AACSB International accredited universities. The next thing that they have in common is they typically require 10 or more years of working experience. At USF, we require 12, at least 5 of which are at a senior managerial, executive, or senior technical level. So that means that everyone coming into these programs has considerable experience and usually quite an impressive track record. The other common thing we've got is that these programs tend to operate in a cohort fashion, which means you have a group of executives going through the program together. They tend to last about 3 years, and they tend to have residencies somewhere between 8 and 12 times a year, roughly monthly, where all of the participants come in and have classroom instruction and discussion. Finally, the programs are all focused on communicating research methods to this group of practitioners with a particular goal of seeing these methods applied. While there is some variation across programs regarding publication, and I'll talk about that later in this presentation, the fact is that most of the programs focus on how research methods can be applied to practical business situations. So within this category of executive DBA programs, there are a number of different approaches to the education. And all of the programs tend to have some core coursework in research methods. All of them tend to have a substantial dissertation or project at the end to demonstrate the ability to apply research methods. But beyond that, there can be some significant differences in the content and the curriculum structure. Now, one type of structure that we see mainly in Europe is sometimes referred to as the dissertation by publication. These have very, very limited coursework. So after you've had some introductory research methods, it is up to the participant to design and employ these methods in research, usually under the supervision of an advisor. This is very similar to the way that many European institutions conduct their PhD programs. So the DBA and a PhD conducted in the same way are probably more similar than they are different. As we move to the US, there are different approaches. One I call the disciplinary version. Sometimes programs of this nature try to distinguish themselves by calling themselves executive PhD programs. And in these programs, in addition to the core research methods, you will normally have some choices of major, as it were, where you take 3 or 4 courses specifically related to the research findings within a particular discipline. So again, these are a little bit closer to a PhD in terms of their structure and in terms of their goal of making you familiar with a discipline's literature, which can be useful if you're actually looking for an academic job, since you tend to be hired by departments, and departments are generally interested mainly in their own literature. Another type of program is what I call the multidisciplinary program. And if you look at the curriculum, it looks a little bit like an expansion of an MBA program with courses in the different functions, but appended to each course name is research. So you would have management research or management research literature, accounting research literature, finance research literature, and so forth. What that does is it gives you a familiarity with the seminal works in each of the disciplines, but does not necessarily try to integrate all those disciplines together. You have a good basic knowledge of what is widely held in each of the business disciplines, and a program like this is easier to teach because we tend to have silos within our university structure, and this allows the faculty teaching in the program to remain within their comfortable silos. Finally, we have what I will refer to as the interdisciplinary approach. And in the interdisciplinary approach, we are much more likely to focus on introducing research methods that are broadly applicable across the social sciences. We do not cover the literature in any particular function. Rather, we leave that up to the student. And the philosophy behind these programs is that most business problems cannot be solved within a single business function. And therefore, if you really want research to be useful to practice, then you need an interdisciplinary perspective as opposed to a narrowly functional perspective. The University of South Florida's program is clearly an interdisciplinary program. In fact, as the program director, I will not allow a course in the program that ends with management, accounting, finance, information systems, or marketing, because I want to do everything possible to discourage disciplinary thinking within the program. Another important aspect of a program's positioning is what it is trying to accomplish with its research. And you can think of this as being a continuum. At one end of the continuum, contribution to scholarship, you're focusing your research on something that would be publishable within academic journals. That is to say, you're more interested in contributing to the research literature than necessarily solving a practical problem. At the other end of the spectrum, you have application to practice, where your main consideration is, will this research actually help solve a problem in the organization? And you're not really worried about whether this is something that has been addressed extensively in the literature or whether it's novel. What you're doing is you're applying research to solve problems. If you look at the University of South Florida's program, we clearly are at the end of the spectrum, focusing on application to practice. And that manifests itself in a number of ways in our program. For example, we have interdisciplinary dissertation committees, and we also have 5 different options for dissertation. The first 2 are fairly standard, a regular dissertation and a collection of papers, usually 3 papers. Most PhD programs in business now offer those 2 options. But we have 3 additional options. writing a practice-focused book that's informed by research, performing a project with an associated white paper, the project not necessarily being in the form of a publication, and finally, a portfolio of activities. And these last three options are specifically designed so that people can do things within their organization that would not necessarily translate to a dissertation, but which demonstrate the application of research to practical problems. Now, I am not going to claim that this is the only way of approaching a DBA, and in fact, most other programs exist much further on the scholarship line than we do, but it is the way we have chosen to focus our program. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any further questions about the Muma program or about DBA programs in general, I hope you will feel free to contact us. The best way to do so is at our email address, muma-dba@usf.edu. Thanks again for watching.